We're going to install a new steering wheel onto this Gen 1 Audi R8 using the Gen 2. This is a 2017 Plus wheel from an Audi R8, and this is my old one. As you can see here, I think it's a little outdated. The design is fine, it's okay, but I really like this design of this wheel. It looks way more modern, it's very fresh, and I think, yeah, it's just gonna look way better once I install this. And yes, some people may ask, Mark, will this work? And the answer is, I hope so, because I got a conversion module all the way from Belgium. There are two guys that startup, a little business in Belgium, and they have programmed a conversion module for your Gen 2 steering wheel. So this is called Ambrace.eu. I will give you a link in the description below. And they figured out a way to program a module where you can hook in your old connectors, actually hook in that will communicate with the Generation 1 Audi R8, including the start and stop button. So they figured out a way to make this work. So if you push this button, the car will start. As well as these buttons here, they figured out a way to make it work as well, including this drive select. Now, they have not gotten back to me of what exactly this drive select button will do exactly. I will give you more answers once I find out.
So let's first explain what you get in the Ambrace kit. The first thing you need to notice here is the CAN module. This is the CAN module that connects to the comfort CAN system. And right here is the LIN module that connects to the steering wheel. This guy lives in the steering wheel as well. It's actually a very small piece of PCB board over here. And the CAN module is connected to this big harness over here. So you can see here. And this is part of the wiring that you need to do in order to be able to connect the comfort CAN system on the wires underneath the steering column. Next thing to note is the wiring for this LIN module here, and it is connected right here to this piece over here. And this entire piece that I'm highlighting is the wiring harness for the steering wheel. This lives in the steering wheel as well. You will wire a couple of wires to the steering wheel, as well as connect a couple of these wires here. Let's assume that these are wires, and they go to a airbag harness module that I'll show you later. And let's assume that this is the airbag harness module over here. This is the airbag harness module over here that you will need to rewire when you start going through the documentation and rewire the Gen 2 harness onto the Gen 1 airbag connector. Now, there are other things that Ambrace also gave you. They gave you this depinning tool to actually help you depin the tool, depin the terminals in these connectors. Like say here, this is a connector, and then within here, within this black connector here, it is a terminal right here that I've highlighted. They've given you a couple of extra ones just in case you're getting a terminal pin and you bent it and it's not able to be reused. Well, great, you can actually go in and install a new terminal pin so you can then move forward with your project. Other thing to note is that they also give you wire splices here. And for me, I actually personally recommend you use these splices called posi taps here. They're much more robust and they don't wreck your wires as much as these wire taps here. Last thing to note is that they gave you some connectors and you will need to connect a couple of wires to these new connectors in order to be able to hook the steering wheel wires, especially the power, ground, and LIN modules, into this LIN harness over here, which will then go into over here. And then from here, this LIN module will wirelessly communicate with the CAN module. And this CAN module will then send CAN signals to the rest of the car. And that is how the whole Ambrace kit works. So let's move on and start taking out things and start installing the steering wheel.
Here's the old steering wheel, and the first step to take out this whole steering wheel is to first take off this airbag cover, because this airbag cover is covering a big nut here that is fixing the entire steering wheel to the car. And for the Gen 1, there are 2 screws. I think these are Torx screws that are at the left side and right side. And in order to access this, you need to turn the wheels this way. It needs to go this way, vertical, and vice versa. And actually in the Gen 1, you can actually just turn on the car. Let me just, without turning on the ignition. And let's see here. This is here. And since it's a hydraulic steering, you can just, once you unlock the steering column, you can just, turn this way. And then in the back, right here, let's see, is a little tab, or these little tabs that I already took out. You just take out this plastic tab, and you will gain access to a screw here. So if I can have right there, it looks like a T20 or T25. Anyway, take out both screws, and then you'll be ready to take off and pop off this airbag cover. Now, once you're ready to pop off the airbag cover, just be very careful. Turn off the car and disconnect the negative battery terminal. You do not want this to throw airs or accidentally deploy the airbag. That won't be good. So the battery has been disconnected. I took out these 2 screws in the back, and it's quite simple. You just pop out the airbag just like this. Yeah, just like that. Now, we're going to expose everything, and then we see that connector here. That's the original connector for the airbag inflator. But in order to take this entire airbag out, going to need to disconnect the airbag wires. All right, so I found it was actually easier to disconnect this big, the airbag connector, along with the connectors for the buttons here on this steering wheel here. It's actually easier because I just need to go in there with a little screwdriver, pull this back, and then pull this out. So next, I'm gonna go and open this connector up and analyze and compare and contrast the other connector that came with the Gen 2 airbag and see if I can use the Gen 2 connector. Otherwise, I would need to depin this connector and then repin everything from the Gen 2 onto this connector here. I hope not, because I would like to just keep everything intact here with this airbag, just in case I need to go back to OEM, such as me selling the car, etc., etc. And now to take the actual steering wheel off, there is a nut here, and you need to get a M12 Triple Spline. So push this in here and then wrench away, and then you should be able to pop off the steering wheel. All right, it's off, and one thing to notice that there is blue Loctite here. So when you install this back, you're gonna need to clean off all this old Loctite and put new Loctite in. So FYI. So here is the 8S steering wheel airbag connector here off the Gen 2 wheel. And you can see it's the same connector as the Type 42 or the Gen 1 wheel here, and they actually use the same connector. It is a 12-pin connector here. However, Ambrace says that the pins are different. The connection here that goes to the ECU is different in the Type 42 versus the Type 4S, or the Gen 1 versus the Gen 2. So therefore, you need to take this airbag connector off the Gen 2 airbag cover. This is it. And repin it towards the appropriate pins that I've highlighted here in order to connect the start button as well as the lid module as well as the airbag connectors appropriately. So the first step to repinning is to take off this back plating here, and it's pretty easy. It's being held on by two, and go and push these guys off here. So let me try to do it. Here. Here, and then you'll be able to pivot this out here like this. And voila. Next thing is to unlock these pins, and actually I unpinned one of these wires here already because I needed to make sure that I can do it before I show it to everyone else here. So what you need to do is, there is this purple lock pin here that you need to take your tool that Ambrace gave you. And where's that tool? The tool's here. And you go and just push the locking pin out. Like so, right here. Let me zoom in now. Take this out, put it somewhere safe so you don't lose it. Now that the pins are unlocked, you can then go and take your depinning tool that actually Ambrace gave you, and this is the depinning tool here, and you go in and push every pin, push inside here to be able to dislodge this locking mechanism here, this back pin here. Just slide this little back locking pin back down so you can pull this out of the way. However, this tool, I don't know, could be how it was machined. It was a little too thick this way, as well as a little bit too wide here. So I had trouble trying to like push this in and then push this locking pin down. So what I did was fortunately I had, let's see here, I had these other smaller depinning tools. I got a bunch over here, as you can see, a bunch here that I got from Amazon from my previous electrical work that I've done in the past. So I was able to go in, slip this in, and then depin this pin here. So this is what you need to do, really. The main steps is to find your pin. Let's say here, which pin? I guess depin the pin number 1. I'm gonna go and depin pin number 2. So trying to depin pin number 2 now. All right, so I got the first gate. Now I need to go in. There's a push, let's see here. It's semi out, but it's still, there's like basically 2 gates. You need to depress. It passes the first gate, and then you need to go in and depress this again so it could pass the final gate outside here. What you can also do is go in to the side, depress it this way, and then take it out this way as well. And here you go. Here's the white wire after I got it out. I had to like push this thing all the way in to flatten this a little flap here. And then just remember, if you need to repin this to a different pin number, just remember to open this flap up. Let's see, up here, open that flap, so you're ready to repin. And that is generally what you need to do to repin, to depin this connector. And I'm just gonna go ahead, fast forward, unpin the connectors that I need to unpin, the start wires. This is the start button, as well as this right here. This is for the other accessories and the other buttons, like the paddles and stuff for the Gen 2 steering wheel. And here's the harness depinned. So I have depinned the power wire, the LIN wire, the ground wire has been depinned. Let's see here. I depinned all the wires for the starter, the start button here. It's been depinned here. I don't need this. What's left is connections for the two airbag deployments. And it's almost done here. I've wired all the terminal pins of the Gen 2 harness here into the Gen 1 connector here. Last thing is to repin the 6-pin connector with 3 wires, the LIN wire here, the purple, the red, the power, and a ground wire, into a 4-pin female. I need to convert this 6-pin connector to a 4-pin connector in order to be able to connect to this 4-pin here. The reason why, Ambrace told me that they don't know which airbag harness you have. It either has a 6-pin connector or a 4-pin connector. They provide a 4-pin connector, and they will provide you a new 4-pin connector in case you have a 6-pin connector. You just simply repin the 3 into here. So the routing is quite simple. Pin 1 goes to pin 1 of the new connector, pin 2 goes to pin 2 of the new connector, and pin 3 goes to pin 3 of the new connector. So I noticed that the 4-pin male connector on the LIN module here is wired wrong. You're supposed to get wires 1, 2, and 3. 2 and 3 are wired correctly. They handle the ground and power. However, number 4 is the LIN signal, LIN, and it's supposed to be on pin number 1. I checked, emailed Ambrace, and they responded to me within a day, and they did tell me that there was a mistake in this harness. So I'm very glad I did, and I recommend, if you do get this harness from Ambrace, check the wires. And yes, mistakes will happen. However, as an early adopter, I just want to set the expectation with you to QA, okay? Because if I had not noticed that wire number 4 is supposed to be in wire in pin number 1, yeah, the whole LIN module would not have worked. So what I'm gonna do is, I already took the cover off here. I'm gonna depin the wire in number 4 and then pin it on number 1 here. And I've already checked the rest of the wires, and they are correct. They sent me a wiring diagram for the LIN module and how all these wires connect to this little connector here. You should double check in QA, especially if you're an early adopter. I'm sure they'll work out the kinks, but yeah, this was one thing that I've caught while setting up the install for the steering wheel. And here's the completed harness. So let's step through the wires and the pins. Black goes to pin 3, green pin 4, blue pin 5, white pin 6. These are your airbag igniters. Moving on to pin 7 below. Pin 7 is ground. It is, yes, pin 7 is ground. It is the brown wire. And then this thin wire is pin 8. This is for the horn. Pin 9 is for, yes, it's the purple wire. That's for the LIN module. And then red is for pin 10, which is power. And here is the final version of the airbag harness module. This is the original Gen 1 connector that I've repinned. To the right is your airbag inflators. One's for central, one's for the lower airbag. And to the left, here is the LIN module harness where I will plug this into the connection for the start button, as this will go into the connection for the other steering wheel buttons here. And all of this information feeds towards this LIN module here. This is a wireless connector that will actually wirelessly communicate with the CAN module right here. And there we have it. That is the airbag harness connector, repinned and ready to go.